Welcome to the Live Like Eden podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay, and I'm thrilled that you're here. Years ago, out of nowhere, I found myself in a radical shift in consciousness that took me over 20 years to fully wrap my head around. Yes, that's right. It took me a long time, and without any warning, down the rabbit hole of darkness I went. Now I'm here to share with you all the insights of awakening, spirituality, health, the energetic world we're living in, and my absolute favorite topic, just how crazy the ego mind can be. These subjects are designed to help you understand the awakening process, to open your mind, and prepare you for your own unique spiritual journey toward inner peace. So I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's discussion. Before we get started with today's show, I want to share with you something I've been working on. I have created a quiz just for you to see where you are on your own unique spiritual path. Everybody loves a quiz, right? You can go to my website at livelikeeden.com, click on the quiz pop-up, and answer 10 quick questions. You'll get an immediate response emailed to you with your results, a personalized podcast playlist including 5 Live Like Eden episodes that will offer you assistance where you currently are. And I've also thrown in a few bonus episodes that you'll receive a few days later. If you're a spiritual junkie, you're in the midst of awakening, or you're simply curious where you might be in your own spiritual process, check it out and feel free to share with your friends who might be interested too. As long as I can remember, even as a young child, I used to think about the larger questions in life, like, what is this world all about? What is the purpose of life itself? What is beyond this world? All these things used to sort of flood my mind. And I'm sure many of you listening have the same thought. What is this whole thing about? And there's many theories out there. There's many faiths, many religions, philosophies, all different ideas of what this world is, what the purpose of it is, where we go after we're here. Can we really truly know any of it until we experience it is the real question. I just watched a really interesting hour-long show on quantum theory or quantum mechanics, and specifically it was about the theory of quantum immortality. Have any of you heard of quantum immortality? Quantum mechanics and metaphysics are big topics today in modern science, as well as the spiritual realm. Many people are discussing consciousness and the power that we have within and what's possible in the quantum field. What I want to talk about today specifically is I want to go over what quantum immortality is, and then I want to bring up A Course in Miracles. It's one of my most favorite teachings out there. For those of you that are interested in the Course, you might really enjoy this episode because I want to give the Course's possible perspective on quantum immortality. Because A Course in Miracles is one of the most unique teachings of anything I've ever come across. A Course in Miracles parts ways with religion, and it has a very clear message. If you can get around its lengthy text and often difficult language, if you really look at it, it's a very simple concept. And I want to use this concept today to dissect quantum immortality, because I think in today's discussion of consciousness, and the more and more we see it, and the more and more you hear people discussing it, and the idea of what's possible in this world, and even the theories of what lies beyond this world, I think it's important to really look at the traps that are out there. Most people don't think about it like this, but when I speak of spiritual awakening and really waking up from this whole concept of a world, this whole identity that we believe ourselves to be, that is where it ultimately leads. It leads us out of this realm and back home to our true nature in God or the Godhead. That's where awakening is ultimately leading us. Now, obviously, there's levels and steps that we all take, and we're all on different parts of that path. And I also want to use Bernadette Roberts, who is no longer living, but she was a wonderful, wonderful writer who had her own experience with losing of the self. She wrote amazing books. One in particular that I'm going to share a little bit for you today is called What is Self? I will link all this stuff in the show notes for you. But I want to leave you at the end with her interpretation of consciousness and use both what she's saying and A Course in Miracles to help maybe understand the quantum a little bit better and the idea of consciousness. And again, these are all theories. These are all different perspectives. And then it's up to you, right? What do you think? What do you feel about all of this? Some of you are going to want to dive right in because it's really fascinating. And then there's concepts within it that can be scary. And then it's like, whoa, let's put the brakes. I don't want to go there, So let's dive right in and get into quantum immortality. What is it? What exactly does this mean? In very simple terms, quantum immortality is stating that you are always aligning with the reality where your consciousness survives. So it's like saying in the moment of your death or possible death, that it's possible that you're splitting timelines. So when you are dying or when you are at the moment of death, your consciousness is shifting timelines into another reality. It's like a split off into a parallel universe. Or this is how they explain it, that there's parallel universes everywhere, that there's multiple possibilities for any given situation. So in the moment of your death, instead of being in the reality of your death where you are no longer there, your consciousness survives and it is another parallel universe where you exist in that timeline. And again, this is the theory, hence the name quantum immortality, that you never die. Now it's clear that the body is dying, the form is dying, but that your consciousness is moving into another form, another reality existing at the same time. So here you get into the whole concept of there's no time. Even though your awareness and your consciousness is only conscious of the life that you're currently living, which I always think is interesting. If I'm really living multiple lives at once, then why do I only remember this one? Again, these are theories, and you can dive into the quantum on your own. I'm not going to get into all that with the science of it. It gets really deep, and the language can be kind of confusing. I want to speak of it more from that awareness perspective, from the critical thinking aspect, from what do you think? What's possible in this world? And so with quantum immortality, they're coming up with the theory, and this theory happens to have come about by a man by the name of Hugh Everett III. I think he was born in the 30s. He came up with this idea that all possible outcomes happen simultaneously. So if there's some situation that's happening, let's say, for instance, that you are in an accident, and in one reality, you live, and you live through that reality, and in the other one, you die. But your consciousness is now only in the realm of where you survive. And in this theory, it's saying there's another parallel universe where you're dead. This whole concept is leading towards that there's not one single outcome. There's a creating of two separate realities or separate universes. My mom told me when she was a young girl that she used to think that she was living in her own little universe inside. And then as she would go deeper within, she'd say, there's more universes. Everybody's in their own inner universe and it's all within. You could think of it like that. This is kind of what this is saying. And the other term for it is the multiverse. You're living in the multiverse of, I'm not sure if it's the Hindus, but I think it is, where they have the whole concept of multiplicity, that everything's happening all at once in different timelines. And, you can watch movies on this, jumping time. And I'm not sure that anybody has ever actually jumped into time and come out and proven it. I don't know that. But we talk about it. We theorize that we can jump into these different realities. So within this concept of quantum immortality, what is it really saying? I mean, in layman's terms, it's saying you never die. There's no such thing as death. You're just jumping into timelines where you survive and your consciousness is going with you, which also begs the question for scientists who believe that consciousness is in the brain. This theory is saying otherwise, that that's not the case. And the evidence for this would be with the thousands and thousands, probably millions of people actually, who've gone through near-death experiences. They are a testament. They are flatlined on the table, pronounced dead, and they're having an experience. Their consciousness is somewhere else, and they come back and explain it all. Now, to science, that would be impossible. But in the theory of quantum immortality, it makes perfect sense that you're continuing on in another universe, a parallel reality of some kind. Call it the afterlife, call it whatever you want. There's really no language for it. But that consciousness is always on the timeline of surviving. This also shows us that time is not necessarily linear. I mean, when we're in this realm, we think it's linear. We think everything is happening past, present, future. But this theory is saying there's sort of a web of possibility. I like to think of our own awareness as giving us tons of different opportunities, options. There's so many possibilities that any given circumstance can play out. I know that there are rigid thinkers in the world who only believe that this equals that, or there's only one way or another. You have two options. That seems so limiting, doesn't it? Only two, although maybe it'd be easier to decide this or that. When you're given so many options, am I going to go this way, that way? All the different ways you can work through any given scenario in your life is possible. Within quantum immortality, you may have heard of the Mandela effect, where people remember hearing that Nelson Mandela died in prison and then later find out that he's still living. This can be looked at in many different ways, right? The logical explanation would be that was not true. It was reported wrong. He really didn't die. But the people that are looking at the quantum are saying, well, maybe that there was a timeline jump, that we skipped a timeline and now we're in a parallel reality. I mean, how the heck would we know, right? I mean, this is what Star Trek's all about, right? Parallel universe, things happening at the same time in a different reality. And if there's all these different timelines happening at the same time, but we're not consciously aware of them, they call this the multiverse, things all happening at once. And there's a ripple effect of everything that we're doing. Everything that we think and believe and all the actions that we take are rippling out into that energetic vibration or ocean, that energy field that we emit everywhere, that everyone's emitting a frequency into this multiverse. One of the main points of the show that I watched was, could the theory of quantum immortality help people with the real fear of death? Because underneath all of us is this fear of dying. We're afraid of the unknown. We really don't know where we're going, what's going to happen. So within all of us, there does exist some level of the fear of death. Even if people that say they're not afraid to die, I think on some level in the unconscious realm, it's there for all of us. Would this theory that can be proven in a sense through many, many, many different people's experiences of near-death experiences or NDEs, could this alleviate your own fear of the unknown, knowing full well that your consciousness is going to go on? And could you lead a less fearful life? Could you dive into things that you really want to do? Could you take risks that you wouldn't have before? Could you create a life that you really want? Would you stand up for something, knowing if something happens to you that it's all right, you're still going to exist in another timeline or exist in another realm, or your consciousness lives on? And this is what the whole spiritual community right now, where everybody's talking about consciousness and the power you have to manifest your reality, and you're affecting everyone around you, and they want the collective to do this and rise up the planet, and we're all going to wake up at the same time. I mean, you hear this out there, that we're just co-creators of the collective consciousness. This is a theme that's out there. They even pose the question, if everybody on the planet or everyone in this world understood that they don't die, how would that change things that happen in our world? Would the world become a better place? Would everyone work together? Would it be more peaceful? I have to be honest, I'm not sure it would matter. I mean, we still have conflict. We still have people believing certain things. Even if you erase your belief in death, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to suddenly kumbaya and get along and want the same for everyone else. Because then they dive into this whole thing like there's no need for competition and there's no need for any of it. It's kind of like a utopia that if you're continuing on in another timeline, what difference does it make, really? Right? You get into this whole idea. So you can see all the possible questions that come with this theory. Some people might develop the concept of, well, why does anything matter? If we just keep going on, it doesn't really matter what I do. I'm going to keep going on and on and on. Or to the contrary, it can make people think things mean more. We can actually affect everything in the world and make it better. Again, because underneath this theory, there's the possibility of multiple realities in the multiverse, you can see how there's endless possibility here. The other thing that quantum immortality is giving us, if it's something that you believe in, is that consciousness exists independently of the physical body. It has really nothing to do so much with the physical body as it is a temporary vehicle while you're here. You're using it for your own conscious awareness to do what you're doing in this timeline, or whatever your purpose is while you're here. That can erase this idea of death and turn it into, or shift perspective that it's a transitional process into another conscious reality, whatever that may be. I'm sure you get at this whole theory what this is. It's basically just saying that we're consciousness and we keep on creating, living, inhabiting another form in another timeline. Now what I want you to look at, and this is just what comes to my mind, and you can ask other questions as I bring this up, but if we're just going through different timelines all the time, it seems like it's just a cycle, almost as if we're locked into a permanent cycle of survival. If you're jumping a timeline because you're dying in one, you jump out of that timeline into a new one, and then you're what? Grabbing a hold of a new reality, another body, another lifetime. And this happens over and over and over and over. Whether the reality that you're living in is going well and things are fabulous and there's peace and love and happiness, or things are going not so hot, right? There's destruction and death and conflict, but the cycle is there. Do you see the pattern here? And even when you're talking about spirituality today, at least in modern day spirituality, I hear a lot of spiritual teachers say we are pure consciousness, or that's what we are. We are conscious beings and we never die. And so therefore, we're just going to keep coming back over and over and creating and creating and creating and extending for what? Ever? I don't know. So where would A Course in Miracles see quantum immortality? For those of you that are students of the Course, or maybe you're interested in what the Course has to say, let's talk about what A Course in Miracles says about consciousness. And I want to use very simple language because there's difficult language sometimes in the text. Sometimes if you don't apply the main idea to everything in the text, it can be confusing. So number one, and I've stated this before in other shows about A Course in Miracles, but it's been a while since I've done one. So let me just very simply go over the main principle on a metaphysical level. The metaphysical teaching of A Course in Miracles is that there is only one reality. And that reality is God. Everything outside of that is unreal. For those of you that have read the text, you know, the very, very beginning, it says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. That right there sums up the whole textbook. But then we need to decondition ourselves. We've been so programmed that that doesn't really resonate with us yet, right? In A Course in Miracles perspective, consciousness sits outside of reality or outside of God, because consciousness would be considered the original split from God. In the Course's teaching, there was an original split from God, and that would have been the thought that we're separate from God, or that the ego basically was born. I want to be separate from God. So it created that split, that initial split, which is consciousness. I mean, just think of the word itself, consciousness. It's conscious of something else. There's two. That is not one. That is not one reality, and that is not the Godhead, according to A Course in Miracles. Keep in mind, when I'm saying this, I'm speaking of it from the Course's perspective, the Course's teaching. So within this realm of consciousness, according to the Course, we have a split mind. And on one side of that mind, we have what's called the ego mind, which is all about our individual identity, our separate, special self away from God. It's like we left God and we created our own playground called the world, right? We're now outside of home. Now, the answer or the correction for that error, or what's called in the Course is the tiny mad idea, because in the Course in Miracles, they basically refer to it as an idea that you left home. In reality, it never happened. That's a whole nother metaphysical concept that I'm not going to get into here yet. But the answer to the error of the split off from the whole, or the split from God, was the Holy Spirit, or the right-minded part of thinking, or the right-minded side of consciousness. So you can look at this like, here's consciousness. It's split. I just think I'm aware of something else. You have the ego mind, which is the wrong-minded thinking system, according to the Course, because it's believing in something that's not real. Remember what it states in the very beginning. Nothing unreal exists. And what's unreal is the world, a form, duality, consciousness, not real. In that dream, and this is called the dream, right? We're living in the dream. In the dream, there's a remedy. There's a messenger of truth. There's the Holy Spirit, the messenger of God, that is there to remind us of home. That's it. It's very, very simple. So in a Course in Miracles perspective, if we're looking at the quantum immortality theory, it would simply say that it's in the realm of the dream. It's in the realm of consciousness, because it's even stating that your consciousness is jumping timelines, jumping into new realities, jumping into the multiverse, where there's infinite possibility. But A Course in Miracles would say you're in the playground in unreality, the unreality of consciousness that's not really God. It's not home. It has actually nothing to do with God, according to the Course. That can be kind of confusing if it's something that you've never heard before. You're going, what the hell are you talking about? But if you look at it very simply, it actually makes a lot of sense. And if you think of it in your mind, if you think of it as Godheads at the top, okay, and then draw a line under it, split line, and then write consciousness, and then draw a line, vertical line down the middle of the page. And on the left side, put the ego and write wrong. And on the right side, put the Holy Spirit and write right-minded thinking. So we live our life most of the time believing in what we see in front of us, right? This whole world of projection that side of consciousness has created. Now, the answer within consciousness to get us home, we're still accessing that side of consciousness. So in a way, quantum immortality is accessing that side. It's pulling us out of the idea that we die. It's pulling us out of the idea that we're a body, right? It's doing all of that. You could say that the Holy Spirit is part of quantum immortality because it's taking you out of form. And that's the Course's big teaching. You are not what you think you are. It would say something like, there's no such thing as bodies. Even though we see bodies, we see separation, we see form all day long. The Course would say that's an illusion. Truth, with a capital T, is home in God, or the Godhead, however you want to talk about it, in that one true reality, where all that exists is God, nothing else. So there can't be consciousness within that, because consciousness represents two, and then it splits off, boom. And that's the split. That's the split mind. That's the fragmented universe that we're living in, according to the Course. And then it all makes sense. But the Course is smart because it's going to use consciousness. It's going to send the Holy Spirit to wake us up very, very, very slowly. And so you could say that maybe quantum immortality is leading us through lifetimes, because that's what it's doing. If that theory holds true, it's basically representing reincarnation, that you're reincarnating. Timelines aside, who cares if it's happening all at once or it's happening in linear time? To the Course in Miracles, it never happened. We're breaking it up in time and all these things because that's how we relate as human beings. That's the only way we can understand. So The Course in Miracles sends the Holy Spirit to meet us where we are in this reality, wherever you are in this reality. And once you hear the call within you, once you see that there's a guide leading you home out of this mess, is when you'll start to wake up, is when you'll start recognizing that, there is more to this whole thing. And the quantum immortality, part of it anyway, is on the side of pulling you out of form, recognizing that you're more than just a body, that you're also this larger, vast awareness. Now, where I believe quantum immortality might be posing a little bit of trap is that it doesn't take you outside of consciousness. It's only taking you to continue to jump timelines all the time. And there's the trap, the looping, the reattachment back into form over and over and over, still living in what the Course refers to as the dream. Do you see what I'm saying? I hope this is making sense, because talking about metaphysics and possible theories can be difficult to follow. And the Course has a very big metaphysical principle. However, it also has the practical side, which is how to live it. How do you do this? How do you undo all of this? And it uses the concept of forgiveness. And I'm not going to get into all that right now. But the metaphysical side, you can see what's happened. We split from the whole, there's consciousness. Consciousness is within the dream. Within consciousness, there's the wrong-minded ego side and the right-minded correction to that supposed error that we apparently made, but didn't really. There's the teacher within us guiding us through conscious awareness and eventually home, out of the entirety of consciousness. That would be A Course in Miracles perspective on this whole thing. If that's something that resonates with you, then what you're going to notice as you watch a lot of spiritual teachings, as you see a lot of people speak about consciousness, is that most people want to go and say, we are pure consciousness. Now, on the level of form, as a human being, that would be true, because that's how we perceive in this world. But on a metaphysical level, that is not true according to A Course in Miracles. That's not what we are. We are not consciousness. There is only one reality, and that's God. And then we return home in that one reality, where there is no longer special identities, separate awarenesses, and consciousness, and all of these things. That is a scary thought, because no one really addresses what lies beyond. It's not even a question most of the time. Now, there are people who do, but it's not in the mainstream, not in what they want you to hear. And you know why? I do think there might be an agenda involved there, but I also think that a lot of this stuff is money driven, right? People need to make money. So they're selling workshops and courses, and they can all be really beneficial, right? Each thing is a stepping stone. If you're talking about siding with the Holy Spirit and the right-minded thought system, each of these things is going to play a role in your waking up process. So they're not wrong. However, to discuss the leap out of the loop or out of consciousness itself is rarely discussed, because I don't know if people even think about it, to be honest. I don't know if it's something people want to think about. That's a scary, scary thought. And in A Course in Miracles, there's the whole concept of fear and the annihilation of the ego identity and what we believe to be real. That's simply not. That is earth-shattering, very, very terrifying to the ego mind, and quite honestly to what we believed to be true about all of it, even to the point of believing that you go on and on and on in the afterlife as a separate conscious awareness. It's taking you outside of that even. And you can begin to see why the fear is going to come up for each and every one of us at some point. It's just part of the deal. But from A Course in Miracles perspective, there's nothing to fear, because what we're living in now is chaos. A Course in Miracles would say, what are you doing? You're dreaming a reality that's not real. It's based on lack and scarcity and conflict. Duality is conflict. The very nature of the top of the split mind is conflict. Consciousness itself has this or that, but within the dream or within this reality and within our human experience, we are absolutely experiencing consciousness. And we're going to utilize consciousness, and it's going to utilize us to pull us out of the dream. And eventually, as the Course says, by the hand of God alone, will pull us back home. That is not something we can will ourselves to do. So I hope that all makes sense. For those of you that really like learning about the quantum and the quantum field, quantum mechanics, it's a really hot topic today. And consciousness itself, very, very interesting. And there are some similarities in A Course in Miracles, but I love breaking it down because there's that very final step that's really never discussed. At least I don't hear it. Maybe I should join some more groups. I don't know. Maybe I should start tuning in more. There's a time and a place to learn from books and groups and people. After a while, it becomes about walking the path on your own and really getting in touch with that right-minded Holy Spirit side of consciousness to guide you out of the dream. As promised in the beginning, I said that I would introduce you to a little information from one of my favorite modern-day contemplatives, the late Bernadette Roberts. Her personal experience is a testament to what's possible. For those of us that haven't experienced what she did, it's hard to wrap our heads around it, but she speaks in such a way and really clarifies it in this book called What is Self that speaks to me so deeply. It's like I know what she's saying is true. And sometimes you don't know why you're resonating with certain material, but it just really speaks to you. Before I read you this passage from her book and we wrap up today's show, I'll briefly explain that she was a very young person who went to a convent. She was raised in the Catholic faith, very dedicated to the teachings, and had her own profound mystical experiences starting fairly young, and then a full-blown transformation over several years, pulling her into the darkness, and eventually eliminating the center, dissolving the self, and having an experience of what she would probably describe as beyond consciousness, like a glimpse beyond. So she has this very direct experience about what is possible for the human condition. And this is my personal opinion. We are all destined to awaken and return home in whichever way that happens for each of us is ours and ours alone. So I want to read you this passage out of her book titled What is Self? I really encourage any of you that are kind of interested in these deeper parts of awakening to check her out. She has this book. She's got several others. I've read a few of them. They're all great. I will link her in the show notes for you for those of you who are interested in reading a bit more about her and her experience. In this part of What is Self on page 82, she's just done some comparing of different religions and psychology, specifically the Hindu faith and Carl Jung and their viewpoints on consciousness and the experience or possible experience of God. She goes on to say this: my comment on this is that the divine was in the know long before man appeared with his consciousness and his self. Also, a view that holds that man alone knows the divine automatically places man at the center of things and makes the rest of the universe inconsequential to the divine. Although man says he believes the divine to be the center of existence, this belief has a curious way of circling back on itself, of being traced back to the believer. The circling on itself attests to the very nature of consciousness, which is totally reflexive. Without a circular reflexive consciousness, there can be no center, and without a center, there is no divine. Thus, self or consciousness is the circle that keeps the divine in, keeps it to itself. Thus, as the center of this reflexive arc or circle, however, the divine is still relative to the circumference, relative to ourself, that is. How to get out of this circle is our human quest and ultimate destiny. The way out, of course, is through the center. And when there is no circumference or self anymore, there is also no center, no interiority, a fact that most people seem to miss or not to understand. What this means is that in the end, the divine is not immanent or within. It is only within to consciousness or due to consciousness. Beyond consciousness, the divine is everywhere. What keeps the divine in or within is the reflexive mechanism of the mind, otherwise known as consciousness. Now, I hope that was not too confusing. But in a nutshell, what she's saying is that man can only experience the divine in his own realm of consciousness, which is often referred to the center, the reflexive mechanism, that part of you that reflects back on itself, the identity, the self. When that's obliterated, is what she's saying, when the self goes bye-bye, she's saying that circumference or that circle is eliminated and the divine is no longer within, it's everywhere. There's no longer a consciousness to perceive it. That is something to think about. The possibility that exists outside of our level of consciousness. And the only time we will ever know that is when it happens. So I hope you enjoyed this show today. I hope it makes you think about your own spiritual path, the questions that you may have about what this is, about what consciousness is, the theory of quantum immortality, that we never die. Bernadette Roberts seems to be pointing that quantum immortality is that circumference, that circle. Eventually, we will all come to this point, as Bernadette stated, that we want to know how to get out of this circle. And as she said, it's our human quest and our ultimate destiny. That'll wrap up today's show. Until next time, I invite you to check out my website at livelikeeden.com. You can sign up for a weekly email reminder when my new podcast and blog comes out, which is every Wednesday. If you are struggling with your own awakening process and you need further assistance or guidance, you can also sign up for a free consult, and I would be more than happy to work with you. If you're enjoying the show, I ask that you share it with others that you think it might benefit. Until next time, thank you so much for listening.